Good evening. Due to the COVID-19 emergency, tonight's Committee of Adjustment hearing is being held by video conference and live streaming via the town's live stream website at oakville.ca. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variance and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act. Please keep in mind the intent of this process is to review the application that is before the committee, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. The process is not intended to be used to resolve any concerns or disputes that may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a deferral, the applicant or authorized agent must contact the Secretary-Treasurer to schedule a new hearing date. In order to conduct an effective and efficient electronic hearing, we have adopted the following process. If you are watching the live stream of this hearing on oakville.ca, and if you wish to speak to an item on the agenda, you can call 905-815-6095. Again, that's 905-815-6095. The phone number is also posted on your screen below the live stream at oakville.ca. Staff will be standing by to take your call. When you call in, staff will ask your name, item number you wish to address, and your telephone number. Further instructions will be provided to you to call back to join the video teleconference. When the chair of the committee polls for interested parties, the Secretary-Treasurer will unmute you when it's your turn to speak. An applicant or agent will be given the opportunity to briefly explain to the committee the basis of the application and answer any questions that may arise. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided for the presentation. You will need to state your full name and address for the record. Any submissions beyond 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All delegations must also state their full name and address for the record. A maximum of 5 minutes will be provided to make your presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chair. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. The applicant or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to respond to the comments made by any interested parties and answer any questions from the committee members. If the applicant or agent has any concerns found in the staff report, particularly with any proposed conditions, this is your opportunity to address us. The matter will then be taken into the committee for a decision. This will mark the end of all discussion. Any person desiring a notice of a decision for an application must provide a written request, preferably through email, to the Secretary-Treasurer. Please note that you must make a written request in order to be included on the list that is used by the local planning appeal tribunal for the giving of any subsequent notice of appeal. Written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed not later than 10 days for minor variances and 15 days for consents to the applicant and or agent and any other person who filed a written request for such notice. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal this to the local planning appeal tribunal. The last day to appeal the decision to the local planning appeal tribunal will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding. The Secretary-Treasurer will then notify the applicant and anyone who received a copy of the decision through written correspondence. People participating in this hearing are to be courteous to and respectful of the members of the committee, town staff, and other people participating in the electronic hearing. Tonight's electronic hearing is being video recorded and available for future viewing at oakville.ca. Thank you. So we have two regrets tonight, Sherry McHale and John Hardcastle. And are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Mr. Flemington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For application CAV A090, I have a conflict with that application, just the applicant being a competitor to the company that I work for.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Flemington. And in an unusual case, I also have a conflict on that same application, as the applicant has a number of ventures with my company, which puts us into an unusual position of having only one committee member left. And I believe, Madam Secretary Treasurer, you're going to step in at this point with respect to this item?
Yes, that is correct. If there's no more declarations of pecuniary interest, then I can move to deferrals, and I'll go from there. So we're going to remove you, Mr. Telawski and Mr. Flemington, from the meeting if there's no more declarations, and then I'm going to take the first deferral and then go back to all the other applications that are requesting a deferral as well. So just...
Okay, sounds good. I'll just ask if there's any other declarations. I see none.
Okay. This is for application CAVA 0902021 at 3518 Wycroft Road. Under the Ontario Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, Section 7, which is the operative section, it provides that the committee cannot proceed without at least 2 members who have no direct or indirect conflict present to hear the application concerned. As there is only 1 member present to hear the application, as Secretary Treasurer, I am deferring the application under that section. Okay, so now I'm going to move the 2 members back into the meeting, and then we can proceed with the other deferrals.
Are we able to proceed at this point?
Yes, I've moved, there's actually 3 applications that will be requesting a deferral. I don't know which one you'd like to start with.
We'll start in the order that we have on my list, 518 Sharon.
Okay, so I believe that's Andrew.
Yes, hi. My name is Andrew Miskiv. I'm from Organica Studio. Our address is 145 Birmingham. Oh, sorry. Hi, my name is Andrew Miskiv. I'm from Organica Studio. Our address is 145 Birmingham Street, Unit 7 in Etobicoke. We are deferring our application. We were told that we're missing 2 additional variances. So at this point, we'll defer the application until future corrections are made.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, all those support the request to defer? Okay, I see none opposed, so that is unanimous. Your application has been deferred, and you'll talk to the Secretary Treasurer.
Well, thank you.
We'll now move to 309 Balsam.
Hi there. My name's Jim Pfeffer. I'm with Mako Architects. We're the architects for this project. There's been some concerns expressed by planning staff as well as one of the immediate neighbors, and planning staff has also suggested we may need another variance. So we'd just like to defer to address those matters.
Okay, thank you. Again, committee members in favor of the deferral? Okay, that is unanimous as well. Your application has been deferred, and you'll see the Secretary Treasurer when you're ready to come back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And then the third one would be 111 Solengate.
Hi, my name is Pedro Pimentel. I'm representing the owner of 111 Solengate Drive. I request deferral since it was found out as an extra shed on the property, and then the variance number 2 for the coverage need to be revised and resubmitted.
Okay, so I would note, sir, that planning staff has issues with the application as well as that. Was it your intention to just revise the variance, or to go back and speak with staff and potentially modify your application?
We will need to change the variance first, and then we will probably speak with staff as well.
Okay, thank you. Any members in favor of the request for deferral? As am I, so that application is also deferred, and once you have talked with staff, you can see the Secretary Treasurer for a next agenda that's available.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, I just ask if there's any further requests for deferral or withdrawals.
I do not see anyone at this time.
Okay, thank you. We have no consent.
Oh, just, sorry, I do show somebody with their hand up, so just let me. Okay, I believe he's for a later application, so sorry, we'll go back to that. We'll go back to the first item.
Okay, so we're just asking for any request for deferral or withdrawal at this time.
That is correct, yes. And I don't see any more.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to CAV A087 at 350 Chartwell Road.
I believe Mr. Aposti is in attendance.
Yep, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Craig Aposti. I'm with John Wilmot Architect, and we are the agent for the application. And our office is located at 594 Chartwell Road, Suite 3 in Oakville.
Okay, thank you. If you could just take us through a brief presentation.
Sure, absolutely.
Just before you do that, sir, sorry, I just want to reiterate, anyone that has an interest in this application, they can call in now at 905-815-6095. Okay, sorry about that. Please proceed.
Thank you. I'll just start by saying just a couple of things. We did have early preliminary discussions with planning staff, and we have received a copy of the comments from staff, and note that they've generally recommended or supported approval. We don't have any concerns with, obviously, with the recommendations or any conditions that they put forward in the report. It's also worth noting that the owner, they have approached several of the neighbors, and the feedback that they received was supportive, and we weren't made aware of any objections through that process. The first variance is to permit a private garage to project 1.8 meters from the front face of the wall on the ground floor, where the zoning bylaw permits a 1.5 meter projection. The garage has been designed with a side entrance with the doors facing the south side yard, reducing the prominence of the garage in the streetscape. And additionally, the front garage wall is integrated with the open canopy detail at the front entrance, which further blends into the front facade. If you can skip ahead to slide 9, probably will show better in the front perspective views and the renderings. The second variance is to permit an increased dwelling depth of 23.1 meters. And the portion with the greatest dwelling depth is along the north side yard, which, based on the current dwelling depth definition, includes the open canopy over the front entry terrace, which in that view you can see is on the far right hand side. And then it also would extend through to the rear yard, includes the rear covered patio as well. And the majority of the increase is the result of open covered patio areas extending across the rear elevation. I can skip ahead to slide 10. Again, you'll be able to see the one-story canopy across the back with the main dwelling walls set well back from there. The third variance is to permit an increased lot coverage of 27.1%, where the zoning bylaw permits a maximum of 25. Again, the proposed lot coverage includes all the outdoor covered patio spaces as well on both the front and rear of the dwelling. And in this case, it also is including for a modest detached covered pool accessory structure as well in the rear yard. And the last variance is permit a minimum front yard setback of 13.95 meters. The reason for pushing the house forward was primarily in response to the jog in the northerly side yard property line in an effort to respect the minimum setback and not encroach onto the neighbors to the north. The reduced yard of 13.95 is appropriate when you consider the wide range of the neighboring front yard setbacks along the street, with the neighbor to the south having a front yard of 18.75, but the neighbor to the north having a yard of 10.25. So based on that, we feel that the variances requested are minor and appropriate. And I'd be happy to answer any questions from the members of the committee.
Okay, thank you. Again, if anyone's interested in this application, please call in now at 905-815-6095. Committee members, do you have any questions for the applicant? I see none. Madam Secretary, has anyone called in to speak to this application?
There's no one at this time.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll close discussion on this item and I'll look for a motion. Ms. Murray. Ms. Murray, you're muted.
Apologies. Mr. Chair, having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the staff is in support of the variances noted. Also having taken into account the presentation this evening, I also note that as far as we can tell, there haven't been any written submissions in opposition or support, notwithstanding though that the presenter this evening indicates that they have worked with the neighbors, which is good to hear. I'm satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application for variance, subject to the conditions that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated May 18th, 2021, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve? That is unanimous. Your application is approved.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, next application has been deferred.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Telawski. I just want to reiterate that the applications, there may be somebody as attendees for any of the applications that were deferred. So anyone who's attending the meeting for 518 Sharon Drive, 309 Balsam Drive, 111 Solingate Drive, or 3518 Wycroft Road, the applications have been deferred and will be heard at a later date, at which time you will be getting notification again through the post should they choose to come back to the Committee of Adjustment. I just wanted to make sure that's clear, that no one waits the entire meeting thinking the applications are going to be heard later. Thank you.
Thank you for that. We'll now proceed to CAV A089 at 1106 Crestview Street. Is Mr. Outright here? There he is.
Yes, here I am. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, members. For the record, my address is 2140 Winston Park Drive, unit number 28 in Oakville. We are representing the owners, the Husseins, for the property at 1106 Crestview Street. And what we're looking for this evening is just one variance for residential floor area ratio. What we're requesting is a floor area ratio of 31.67%, whereas 29% is required for this particular sized lot. We're not asking for coverage or height, just the one variance this evening. Essentially, that results in floor area ratio that's approximately 400 square feet over the requirement, 37.23 meters squared. Just to note the planning comments that are in favor of the variance. There is, the house has been well designed to articulate the front elevation with the second floor step back, as well as I said, many undulations. So planning has no issue pertaining to the additional floor area, and the fact that it's sort of hidden within the context of the design. It's also an interesting shaped, almost triangular lot. So I don't believe there's any adverse effects of the neighbors, especially being that we're not asking for any other variances here. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
For the, wondering, Mr. Owood, in your presentation, did you have any elevations in case there's people viewing this from home that have an interest? Or did you just...
The elevation. Yeah, I apologize. There were elevations submitted with the applications. I mean, if Jasmine, if you want to put them up. There you go. Front elevation, once again, just the undulations of the front elevation. The rear is a walkout, of course. And once again, just there's no height variances, no setback variances. So I think that gives a good viewpoint of the design.
That one gives a very good. Okay, I just wanted to make sure in case there's anybody that wants to call in that they could see the whole finished product. Again, if anyone does have an interest, please call 905-815-6095. Committee members, I see Ms. Murray has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the town staff. Just to confirm that because there is a staircase to the balconies, I do see balconies, those are then permitted. Just looking for clarification. Thank you.
So in this instance, there's an elevation that goes down at the rear of the site. So the location that appears to be a balcony is actually the first floor of the property. So it would be permitted.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I see none. Madam Secretary, has anyone called in for this application?
There is no calls at this time.
Okay, thank you. With that, I'll close discussion and I'll look for a motion. Mr. Flemington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report that I do note is in favor of the application, also having taken into account the presentation made by the applicant's agent this evening, noting that there were no negative questions from the public, no written or oral objections from the public either. I am prepared to make a motion that the application be approved as applied for, finding that it meets all 4 tests of the Planning Act and that it has the following 2 conditions attached: that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan dated 05/08/21, and elevations dated February 25th, 21. And the standard condition that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there any discussion on that motion? None. All those in favor of the motion to approve? That is unanimous. Your application has been approved.
Great. Have a great evening.
Great. Thank you. You too. We'll now move on to CAV A0 91 at 2444 Valley Forest Way. I believe I did see Mr. Barrett in the audience.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, committee members, town staff.
Good evening. Just before you start, I'll just once again give out the phone number. Anyone with an interest in this application, please call 905-815-6095. And Mr. Barrett, just for the record, your name and address, and then your presentation, please.
Sure, gladly. It's Graham Barrett, 1575 Dundas Street West, Toronto. This is a fairly minor variance application. I submitted a cover letter explaining, but I'd be happy to go through it. Essentially, it's a small rear 2-story addition squaring off one corner of the dwelling. There's only one variance required, and that's for lot coverage, which is 35% maximum, 36% proposed. The reason for this is that the existing dwelling was built to the maximum allowable when it was constructed. This small addition will allow for a slightly larger rec room in the basement, slightly larger kitchen on the ground floor, and a slightly larger ensuite for the master bedroom on the second floor. I have submitted 6 letters of support. The owner's been very considerate speaking to his neighbors about this. There have been relatively few other approvals in this neighborhood, probably because everything was built to the max. But in this case, we do have an example of a greater variance for lot coverage that was approved nearby. If you skip ahead in my presentation, you can see that's the existing dwelling where the addition will be constructed. The next slide is looking at the adjacent dwelling, which you can see is squared off, similar to what we're proposing. The next slide is the other adjacent dwelling, also squared off. And the next slide is, this is a house in the immediate area, 2351 Valley Forest Way, which I believe built a small 1-story addition. This is on the same model of home. The owner had a look at this when it was up for sale and provided that photo. And the next slide will show the sunroom that is currently being built around the corner of 2370 Valley Stream Place. And the next slide is the committee decision for that property, which is from 2020, and it was permitted at 37.4%. So this small addition, if you skip ahead, you can see the location of the proposed work. It's quite minor at the rear. Also some interior alterations to the garage area to create a mudroom, but no variance is required for that. And I believe this passes the 4 tests. It's quite minor in nature. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Barrett. I'm not sure there's anyone left to call in, given all the letters of support you have, but just in case, again, 905-815-6095, if you'd like to speak to this application. Committee members, any questions for Mr. Barrett? No questions. Madam Secretary, has anyone called in for this application?
There's no callers at this time.
Okay, thank you. I'll then close discussion and entertain a motion. Ms. Murray.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the staff is in support of, having also taken into account the comments presented by the applicant this evening, as well as the great work done in getting letters of support from the neighbors, that is much appreciated. Always great when you're able to get your neighbors on side. And it also appreciated seeing the photos for reference. So I note that influenced my decision on the submission. I am satisfied with the minor variance meets all four tests under the Planning Act, and I'm prepared to make a motion to support the variances requested with the following conditions: that the addition be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings, revision number 1 dated May 27th, 2021, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any discussion on that motion? I see none. All those in favor of the motion to approve? That is unanimous. Your application is approved.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too, sir. Move on to CAB A092 at 189 Forestwood Drive. Mr. Capper's in the wings.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and town staff.
Good evening, Mr. Capper. I see 3 letters of support. You've got a ways to go to equal Mr. Barrett's efforts.
Had I known it was a competition.
Can you give us your name and address for the record, and please proceed?
Absolutely. For the record, my name is David Capper. I'm a planning consultant with Glenn Schnarr Associates in Mississauga. Our mailing address is 10 Kingsbridge Garden Circle, Mississauga, Ontario, L5R3K6. And I'm here before you this evening for application CAV 092 2021. And it's for the property located at 189 Forestwood Drive in Oakville. If I could get the next slide, please. Through you, Mr. Chair, the subject property is highlighted in red. And as you can see, it's in an area where there are relatively large lots, and on some of those lots there has been corresponding infill development that has occurred, and certainly this proposal represents something that is in keeping with not only that new development that's occurring, but also generally in keeping with the existing building stock in the neighborhood. If I could get the next slide, please. There are 2 variances that are before you this evening to facilitate the construction of this single detached dwelling. The first variance is seeks an increase in the maximum residential floor area. The maximum permitted under the zone is 29%, and the application seeks permissions for 30.99%. And that's an increase of 1.9%, which is 30.14 square meters with just over 324 square feet of building floor area within the building. In addition to that, there's a variance for an increase in building height. The zoning bylaw regulates the maximum building height to 9 meters, and there's a request for an increase to 9.3 meters, which is obviously a 30 centimeter increase in building height, or just over 11 inches. Next slide, please. You can see the subject property on this site plan. The area shown in red is the existing building footprint, and you'll note that the proposed building footprint and covered porch areas are located within both the hatched area and in the rear yard. Driveway remains in its existing location, and that's deliberate in order to preserve 2 of the large stature trees that are located in the front yard of the property. You will note that in the side yards of the property, there is quite a substantial amount of mature trees. It is the intent of this application to preserve those trees. There are a few smaller bushes in the front of the property that are proposed to be removed. Next slide, please. Very quickly, just like to walk you through the elevations for the proposed building. This is the front elevation. You'll notice that the roof line, although there is an increase in building height being sought, the roof line has a number of undulations in it to try and soften the massing of the building as well as the proposed building height. And certainly the front door within the elevation sticks, sort of protrudes out to the front of the building, and certainly softens the overall facade of the building. Next slide, please, is the rear elevation, and you can see the porch area, and again on the second floor above the porch area, you can see the undulations within the roof line of the building. Next slide, please. This is the north elevation. So if you're standing at the front of the property, it's on the left side. And the last slide is the south elevation, which shows the right-hand side of the property if you're looking at it from the street. I believe that concludes my presentation for this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions should the committee have them. I did want to point out, however, you've already done so that we do have, our clients did consult with their neighbors, and we did have support letters from 3 of the neighbors. We did not receive any letters of objection from the neighbors, and I don't believe the town received any either.
Thank you, Mr. Capper. When it comes to letters of support from the community, I think we'd always consider that a very healthy competition to see who can get the highest number. But, if there is anyone that wishes to speak to this application, if you could please call 905-815-6095 at this time. First, I'll look to the committee whether you have any questions for Mr. Capper. No questions. Madam Secretary, is anyone called in to speak to this application?
There are no callers at this time.
Okay. Thank you. We'll close discussion and again look for a motion. I see Mr. Flemington with his hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having reviewed the applicant's written submission, as well as the presentation made by the applicant's agent this evening, noting that there were 3 letters of support from the neighbors. Also noting that the staff's report is in support of the application and that there were no written or oral objections from the public. I am prepared to move a motion that the application be approved as applied for, finding that it's minor in nature and it meets all 4 tests of the Planning Act, with the following 2 conditions: that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan revision number 4, dated March 24th, 2021, and elevation drawings revision number 3, dated March 24th, 2021, as well as our standard condition that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Thank you, Mr. Flemington. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to approve? That is unanimous. Your application is approved.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you. You too. Now, moving on to application CAV A093 at 2058 Constance Drive. I see Ms. Mativa in the wings, and anyone with an interest in this application, if they could please call 905-815-6095. We get your name and address for the record, please?
Of course. First, just to test my audio, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So my name is Stephanie Maviva. I'm a planner with Glenn Schnarr and Associates. Mailing address is 10 Knightsbridge Garden Circle in Mississauga. Postal code is L5R3K6.
Okay, if you proceed with your presentation, please.
Thank you very much. If I could have the next slide, please. So the property is located at 2058 Constance Drive. It's on the south side of Constance Drive, west of Duncan Road. It is located within an established neighborhood. We do note, as noted in our written correspondence as well, the neighborhood has a little bit of a changing character. There has been some infill development over the past number of years. If I could have the next slide, please. This particular application is seeking permission to facilitate a 2-story replacement dwelling. To facilitate this application, we need 3 variances. There is a reduced minimum flankage yard setback of 2.13 meters, whereas 3.5 meters is required. we're seeking an increased maximum residential floor area ratio for the dwelling of 43.36%, whereas 40% is permitted. And finally, we're seeking an increased lot coverage of 35.45%, whereas 35% is permitted. If I could have the next slide, please. This is the site plan of the application. So just wish to highlight a few things while we're on this one. The proposed driveway has been relocated to be off of Duncan Road, which would cross the front yard setback. As well, the requested lot coverage includes, so of the requested lot coverage, approximately 6.85% or 50.95 square meters of this requested lot coverage is contained within a front covered porch area, which is in the area of the Duncan Road frontage. There's also a covered side porch off of the Constance Drive elevation, a covered rear porch in the rear yard, as well as a basement walkout area. We wish to note that the dwelling itself complies with the required lot coverage provision. If I could have the next slide, please. So this is the front elevation along Duncan Road. So this is the front covered porch area. The dwelling itself has been designed to have architectural articulations along this elevation, as well as the elevation along Constance Drive, to break up the massing and provide these covered porch features that are found throughout the neighborhood. If I could have the next slide, please. This is the rear elevation. So this is the covered rear porch area. The walkout basement would be just on the right-hand side of this elevation. Next slide, please. This is the side elevation along Constance Drive. So again, there's this covered side porch and architectural articulations, again, to break up the massing. And if I could have the last slide, please. This is the other side elevation facing the adjoining property. The last thing we wish to highlight, there has been some discussions with town staff. The proposal has been designed to provide a built form that responds to the neighborhood and its changing character. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that there may be.
Okay, thank you very much. If anyone's watching that has an interest in this application would like to speak, if you could please again call 905-815-6095. Committee members, any questions for the applicant? I see none. Madam Secretary, any calls on this item?
There's no callers at this time.
Thank you. All right, I will close discussion. Look for a motion. I'm going to pick Ms. Murray, seeing that I don't see anyone volunteering. I'll go to Mr. Flemington. Ms. Murray doesn't seem to be available.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
So I'm going to I note that I'm going to move a motion that the application be approved as applied for. I note that the staff report has supported a number of the different variances within the application. One just being the residential floor area that they weren't supporting. So I just think that with regards to, in the neighborhood, as far as other buildings being built, there are times where you need to start at some point. I'm also looking at the fact that there have been no negative written or oral comments with regards to what is being proposed for this site. Having, posted the sign and the neighbors being advised of this variance. So I'm going to take that sort of as, not a negative to the neighbors, as well as, they've shown the elevations and have tried to, architecturally deal with some of the massing of the building. So I am going to move that the application be approved as applied for, finding that it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act. And I would include, sorry, just give me a sec here. Sorry, I don't have the address. This is A093. I don't have the drawings in front of me as far as noting the condition that it be approved as applied for with the drawings as submitted with the application. And as well, the second condition, if the building, if their approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision, if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Just to add, maybe perhaps the agent could provide those dates for you, Mr. Flemington, if you would like to add them to your condition.
Please.
Bear with me for 1 second. I'm just going to zoom into the drawings.
Thank you.
So the drawings are dated May 31st of 2021. So that would be revision.
All of them are that date, and the revision, sorry, what revision number is it?
Revision number 2.
Revision number 2?
Mm-hmm.
And that's for the site plan and the elevation drawings.
The site plan is dated May 18th of 2021. The architectural drawings that would include the floor plans and elevations, those are dated May 31st, 2021, revision 2.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Flemington. I suspect Ms. Murray, do you want to speak to this application? Or motion, sorry?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Madam Secretary, I guess we've gone past the call-in, so I will now call for vote on the motion to approve. All those in favor? That is unanimous. The application is approved.
Thank you very much. Have a good night.
Thank you. We'll go to our last application of the night, which is CAV A096 at 500 Wainway Court. Anyone with an interest in this application, can you please call in at 905-815-6095.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Good evening, Mr. Kieran.
Good evening. I'm the agent for the applicants. My name is Joris Kieran. 11 Bronte Road, Unit 31. In Oakville is the address. And I'll just jump right into a brief presentation here. So this application was only going to have 2 variance requests on it, but because of the recent housekeeping amendment that was passed, it triggered 2 additional variances pertaining to the window well encroachment. So it went to 4 variances, and I'll briefly speak to all of them. So on slide 1 now, it's just pointing out the window wells that require the variance. And as noted in the staff report, the main reason behind the variance, the new bylaw is to prevent window wells from encroaching into side yards to the extent that they interfere with drainage. and other technical things. But because this is a flankage yard, it's not really applicable, and that's why it's being supported. So both width and depth is increasing. When we designed the house, 4 months ago, 3 months ago, this wasn't even really a concern, but now the bylaw changed midway through our design process. So that's slide 1 that covers variants 1 and 2. Next slide, please. So the second variance is, third variance is the additional garage area, which is approximately indicated on this plan, showing the additional space that we're seeking, which, as you can see, is in the back of the garage. It's a 2-car garage from the front, and that third bay is located in behind, so it's not visible from the front elevation. This is also supported by staff. And the third slide. So next slide, please. So this is the fourth variance, which is the RFA residential floor area increase, and we're seeking a slight increase here to 43.3%, and we just usually try to help the committee visualize the additional area where it's occurring. This is more or less where it's being added, so it's on the second floor. And in that same sort of vein, if I go to slide number 4, please. This is the side elevation, so a rendering of the flankage yard, and we did work with staff to amend this elevation slightly from its original form, because they had some suggestions on how to reduce the massing, which we implemented, and this is the result and what they're supportive of. So that RFA is pretty well hidden. Yeah, that concludes the presentation. I'll answer any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Kieran. I'll just remind the audience again, anyone wishing to speak to this, if you can call in at 905-815-6095. I know we do have Mr. Sharma here who wishes to speak, but before that, I'll just go back to the committee and ask if committee has any questions for the applicant or staff. I see no questions at this time, so I call on Mr. Sharma then, if he could give us his full name and address and speak to us with his concerns, if any, on this application.
Thank you guys so much. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Sahil Sharma, and I'm currently living at 500 Wainwright Court in Oakville. So I currently reside at Dan Beersingera's house. And I've been living here since May. I'm not sure if this is a concern or if it doesn't make any sense for you guys, but I just want to let you guys know what I've been through and how I know Dan Beersingera as. Upon me moving in, it wasn't cleaned. There was garbage everywhere. The driveway is falling apart. There's like potholes in the driveway. The city, I contacted the city.
Or if I can interrupt you, do you have any concerns with the application that's in front of this committee?
I have concerns that it won't be maintained, and it'll be a very big hassle for the city, just because how this home has been here for 30 years and it has not been maintained.
Okay, thank you, sir. Committee members, do you have any questions for Mr. Sharma? I see none. Madam Secretary, are there any other callers in for this application?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, you've heard the presentation. You've heard from the one resident with respect to, yes, the property owners as opposed to the application that's in front of you. At this point, I'm going to close discussion and I'm going to entertain a motion. Ms. Murray, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Having conducted my site visit and reviewed the applicant's written submission as well as the town's written staff report, which I note that the staff is in support of, having also taken into account the comments presented by the applicant this evening, as well as the submissions from Mr. Sharma, and thank you for citing your concerns. I would say this committee is not empowered to deal with some of those complaints, and so we will move directly then on to the variances. I note that there is no objections from the public. Neither are there emails of support, but I am satisfied that the minor variance application meets all 4 tests under the Planning Act, and I'm prepared to make a motion to approve the application for the variance subject to the following conditions, which is that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the site plan to the satisfaction of the Director of Planning as it relates to proposed fencing and elevation drawings dated May 28, 2021. And again, thank you for the renderings from the applicant, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of a decision if a building permit has not been issued. Thank you.
Ms. Murray, any discussion on that motion to approve? I see none. All those in favor of the motion to approve? That is unanimous. Your application is approved, sir.
Thank you. Good evening.
Well, good evening. That concludes the applications for tonight. Committee members, we have minutes from June the 8th. Ms. Murray, moving those. Looking for a motion to adjourn in Mr. Hardcastle's absence. Mr. Flemington, thank you. We are adjourned.